the 2020 presidential race will forever be remembered as the pandemic election. More than 200,000 Americans are dead, millions unemployed, and America's national debt is more than 100% of GDP. Little surprise that President Trump's handling of the pandemic has been the defining issue of the election. It's also been an election framed by the policies and the personality of a man who's wrecked political norms and undermined institutions. But what's the real legacy of the past 4 years? The Economist US team has been following the twists and turns of Trump's presidency. Here's their analysis. In 2019, Donald Trump presided over America's lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, a buoyant stock market, and a fast annual wage growth among the lowest paid workers. The economy was booming, just as he'd promised.
I have made billions of dollars in business making deals. Now I'm going to make our country rich again.
Trump's tax cut bill was signed within a year of taking office, cutting corporate tax from 35% to 21% and decreasing taxes for around 65% of working Americans in 2018, but particularly for the rich.
If you look at the tax cuts and what they actually did, they were fairly regressive. I think it's certainly the case that if you inject funds into the economy by cutting taxes, then that's going to give the economy some juice. That had something to do with the economy's health in the run-up to the pandemic.
Trump's tax cut splurge helped America's GDP grow faster than expected compared with the rest of the rich world. It also meant it had a bigger budget deficit going into the COVID-19 crisis. When the pandemic hit, Congress implemented the world's largest fiscal package.
The Senate did unanimously approve an historic $2 trillion relief bill.
They'll sign the single biggest economic relief package.
At the moment, while the economy is really struggling, there's no sign of inflation. Interest rates are very, very low. There are no signals really out there saying that you need to stop borrowing right now.
America's grim experience of COVID-19 triggered a deep recession, but it will still probably be the best performing G7 economy in 2020.
The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots. The future belongs to sovereign and independent nations.
President Trump promised to put America first, an anti-globalist stance which he wasted no time in implementing, pulling America out of 10 international organizations or treaties.
He promised to renegotiate all of America's trade deals. His tactics seemed to be threatening other countries with tariffs and essentially trying to squeeze concessions out of them.
The fact is, NAFTA has been a disaster for the United States, a complete and total disaster.
His critics said that this is a very, very dangerous strategy because the risk is you toxify politics in the other countries that you're dealing with. And so if you enter a negotiation essentially promising to bully the other side into submission, the risk is it just kind of blows up in your face. Yet, clearly, there were all these deals.
He renegotiated a deal with Mexico and Canada and a deal with South Korea. And then there's China. Starting in 2018, America waged a trade war with China. The average tariff rate on goods travelling between America and China has since more than tripled.
If Trump came in promising to, in some ways, reset the relationship with China, when it comes to trade, he has managed to do that. We can disagree about whether all of it is in a good way, but he's reset it.
The two countries agreed the first phase of a trade deal in January 2020, which included an agreement from China to lift some trade barriers and to buy certain American products. But right now, it doesn't look like China will meet those commitments.
The other thing, there are still tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese exports to America. And looking ahead, I think those will be quite difficult to roll back entirely. The US-China relationship has been changed, and in a way that is not going to be very easy to reverse, certainly not politically.
We will build a great wall along the southern border, and Mexico will pay for the wall.
It's one of the pledges that launched Trump's campaign and helped win him the White House. So how much impact has Trump had on immigration?
And so Mexico has not paid for the wall, and he has not built much new wall, but the wall on the southern border is real, and he has taken funds from the Defense Department to pay for it. He has also changed the asylum system. He has made it much harder for people fleeing persecution to claim asylum at the southern border. I think last year, for the first time, Canada overtook the United States as the country that settles the most refugees.
Trump's administration slashed the number of refugee admissions from 108,000 by the end of 2016 to 24,000 by the end of 2019. Under Trump, the number of migrants in detention centres has increased. The tone and intention of his policies has been clear and unwavering.
Children and adults are seen huddled together in the building that's divided up into chain-link fencing that looks like a cage.
It was a statement that immigration was something that was not desirable, and that has been the main focus of his presidency.
Many of the policies that grabbed the headlines were enacted by executive orders signed by the president without needing to be passed through Congress.
This is border security, immigration enforcement and improvements. Very important. We've been talking about this right from the beginning.
Which means, in theory, they could be reversed by the same process.
That may be true as a technical matter, but the extent to which he has changed America's stance on immigration, the extent to which he has turned the Republican Party away from the long-standing bipartisan consensus that we are a nation of immigrants, and that's a source of strength and pride, can't be so easily undone. Also, the sheer number of changes he's made is going to be really hard for a Biden administration, if indeed that's what we have, to contend with, because it's going to be coming into office and having to deal with a depressed economy, with a pandemic, with probably calls for government reform. There's just a limited amount of political capital.
So Obama's talking about all of this with the global warming and that. A lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. A lot of it.
Trump announced America would withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. Though other countries have sought to move away from fossil fuels, Trump set about reigniting America's oil, natural gas, and coal industries.
Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of the Interior have really been firing on all cylinders in terms of removing regulations on coal plants, not only, but also methane pipelines and exploration of wilderness. The cumulative effect of that, there's some people have measured that this would increase carbon dioxide emissions by roughly 3% in a year over time, which is substantial. It's at a time when you want America to be going the opposite direction, especially because you want other countries to feel obliged to also follow in that direction.
In total, Trump has reversed 79 environmental rules, including the Clean Power Plan, which had set limits on carbon emissions from electricity plants, replacing it with a more lenient rule. Many of the rollbacks are facing legal challenges by states and environmental groups, but these might fail.
The thing that's tricky about this, if Trump were to be elected and litigation continues, then there's a chance that some of Trump's changes would become permanent. And perhaps more damaging than that, the Supreme Court could rule to limit the EPA's authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. So the Environmental Protection Agency, which serves under the president, would be limited under all future presidents, even a Democratic one, from having really bold environmental regulations.
When I got in, we had over 100 federal judges that weren't appointed. It was like a big, beautiful present to all of us.
Trump has appointed 217 federal judges, including 161 to district courts, 53 to courts of appeal, and 3 to the Supreme Court.
It is my honor to nominate Amy Coney Barrett.
In all, Trump has appointed more than a quarter of the judiciary. He's moved faster than any president in their first term for 40 years. The appointment or elevation of so many conservative judges is already reshaping American law. Many will sit for life, so the impact, not least in limiting the scale and scope of government legislation, could be felt for decades to come.
Probably most pronounced are going to be at the Supreme Court. There's this sort of long-standing worry that Roe versus Wade, which is the Supreme Court case that gave women a constitutional right to an abortion, will be limited even further. Some people think it might even be repealed entirely. There's another challenge to the Affordable Care Act up before them on November 10th. There's also a lot of fear about things happening along any of these dimensions that could hamper a sort of subsequent Democratic administration, which is likely to try and use the machinery of the administrative state to sort of achieve its policy ambitions. And the idea is that a very sort of Trump-heavy Supreme Court and Trump-heavy courts generally are just going to limit that quite a lot.
Perhaps Trump's most enduring legacy will go far beyond policy.
When you report fake news, you are the enemy of the people.
4 years of lies and bullying have inflamed political discourse in America.
Partisanship and polarization have been increasing for many decades before Trump came onto the scene. You can say that Trump is sort of a symptom of that polarization, but that he's also accelerated it in some ways.
Obama was seen as hugely divisive. Trump is seen as divisive. The difference is Barack Obama made conscious efforts to reach out to people who disagreed with him. Donald Trump has not done that. And so even to the extent that every president is divisive, he has reveled in the divisiveness in a way that past presidents have not.
I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
So you look at sort of measures of how Republicans feel about Democrats and Democrats feel about Republicans. You look at whether people talk about the other party as evil or immoral, or all these sorts of kind of extreme measures. They all go up during the Trump administration.
A recent survey found that 1 in 5 Americans believed violence could be justified to some extent if the other party wins the impending election. But America isn't just fractured along political lines.
And you see that the Republican parties increasingly become a party of white identity. If you identify as having racially conservative views on African Americans, you're much more likely to become a Republican now than ever before. Trump has just accelerated the polarization along these identity lines. And even if he loses, it will still be the case.
If he wins, obviously, we have another 4 years to assess his legacy. If he loses, I think that he exposed and invigorated a part of American culture that some had ignored in the past. And I don't think that that's going away.
I'm Samir Keynes, The Economist's Trade and Globalization Editor. You can follow our coverage of the 2020 election and what happens next by clicking on the link opposite. Thanks for watching.